And welcome back. So I'm gonna do a couple of small additional upgrades as well as the oil change in this video prior to actually getting this thing on the street and finally driving it to get it prepped for its annual inspection. I've got a couple items here. One of them is this one of these underhood lights. This is just a generic one, aftermarket one, and unfortunately it came broke, but I think we can get around that. Because you'll notice that we have the spot up here in the hood for the hood light, and more importantly, we already have a wiring here with just a protective cap on it that hood light should plug into. So I figured since I got these for another project and ended up not needing them, and I found them the other day in a parts box, might as well see if we can just add them here. And I'll put links in the description to this, but this is also just an aftermarket cable for it. It's not the OEM power cable for the hood light, but this should work. I'm just going to put this in a piece of loom and get it situated, because there's a couple of spots that cable would snip into. It's like one right there. There's a Christmas tree clip that would go here, one here on the back of this hood bracket, and then finally another one right here, and that's just to help it, flex and bend as the hood opens and closes. The way this mount kind of works is that it should have acted like a hinge on this one, but this is the side that broke off. So this piece, this little notch, yes, it is a Dorman product. This little notch goes up here inside that notch, and it just has like a little push pin that secures this, and then it should have acted like a hinge to then close forward. Just to show you here, so that piece would be attached to the hood, and this piece should have been attached to here like a hinge, and that way once this was mounted to the hood, then this could have just hinged forward and closed. I don't know, like I said, it's not necessarily a needed thing, but again, I had the parts. I figured, let's give it a shot. There may be positive 12 volts here at all times like they're supposed to be normally, or it may be something we have to go into the Alpha software in order to enable. But that's the point of doing this, is just to kind of try it. I mean, we got the parts, we've got the plug pre-wired there. Might as well go ahead and try it and give us a another little upgrade. The other item that we were going to try, which is a little bit more kind of cool, is we got a replacement hood latch. And the reason why we got a replacement is we got the one that is meant to be used for remote start. When you have a remote start option come from factory, you get an alternate hinge here, and what the hinge does is basically tell the body control module whether the hood is open or not, for safety feature, for a safety mechanism. If the hood's open, then you can't remote start the truck. Because you'll notice down here, we're pre-wired for that hinge. Now, looks like I'll have to clean some dirt out of there and make sure get some contact cleaner in there. Now, the issue is that even though you have the wiring out here for this, some have reported that it doesn't actually go and extend into the cab and hook up to the body computer, or I should say the body control module, or the body computer, however you want to look at it. But a lot of people have had pretty good success in just either A, putting a resistor in there, which, if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but just be mindful that if you put a resistor in there in lieu of changing out this latch, then you're defeating a safety mechanism. It would basically mean you'd be able to start the truck with the hood open, remote start it, which could be a bad thing. But to each their own. I'm not saying what you should or shouldn't do. But you see our tape just gave away there. So we're going to get that connector cleaned out on the next half of this video. We're going to get this latch changed out. And then we'll go through the Alpha software, AlphaOBD software you saw us use in a couple of videos now. I'll go through the settings we need to turn on, and then we'll see if we can remote start it. Now, because remember, earlier in the series when we programmed an extra set of keys for this RAM, we programmed in a set, an aftermarket set of fobs that had the remote start button on it, even though it's not enabled for this truck. And if you double click the remote start button, it'll do nothing. The point is the fobs have already been programmed for this truck, so the valid button is there. And I've also heard from individuals that if you have the fobs that don't have the remote start button, a lot of times if you open them up and just look underneath, you have the metallic contact patch on the PCB. You just need the replacement membrane that has the little pad on the opposite side of the rubber membrane that allows that connection to take place. So we already have keys programmed for the truck that have a remote start button. I'll bring you back when we do it, but I'll show you the part number. We got an OEM hood latch that has the remote start option on it. We're going to get this connector cleaned out, get it plugged in, and then we'll do the programming with AlphaOBD software, and we'll see if we can enable it. Because if we can enable remote start in this truck for just the cost of a hood latch and a little bit of programming time in the software and a couple of fobs, then heck, why not do it? It's actually be a pretty cool upgrade to have. But I'm going to work on this light first, and then I'll bring you back and kind of show you what I can come up with. One moment. So we went ahead and got our light mounted, plugged in, and just snaked our wire down past between the hood and the felt here, just like it would be if it was installed factory. We did go ahead and add a piece of loom to the wiring harness that you saw earlier. Attached it to the point here behind the hinge and the point here on this cowl piece. I did make a little elbow bend of wiring, loom wiring, you see right there, just kind of pushing it off to the side to give it some, some ability to flex when it's open versus closed, so it doesn't tug on the wiring itself. As far as the factory connector here, just remove the blocking plug that was in it. And just in the process of getting these two to connect, put that back where it goes. There it goes. There we go. Take this end. This aftermarket harness is a little bit longer than it needed to be, but I think it'll still work. Okay. Okay. That does not have the right connector on it. Well, that blows. I've got the wrong connector, at least for this make model, that fits that pin. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to pull this wiring harness out of here, unfortunately. And we'll just go grab the wiring harness out of our parts RAM. Now, I did contemplate pulling the light out of our parts RAM, but when I looked up inside of it, it's pretty corroded and beat. So I don't want to do that, but let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to pull that wiring harness out of parts RAM and I'll bring you right back. One moment. And we're back. So this was the dome light out of the hood light out of the parts RAM. You can see they got some corrosion in there, some green pussies growing in there, green crusties I should say. So that's why I didn't want to really use that one, but we were successful and pulled out the factory wiring harness for that light. So we're going to use this factory harness with this light, and we should be a little bit hopefully better off. Let's make sure that we can fit our connector down here. Looks like it's the same one, but looks could be deceiving. Let's see, is that the one that goes down? Yep, it is. Okay, perfect. So yeah, that'll go in, that'll lock just fine. Interesting enough, see, they had this, down here on the 2009. rather than this connector being up here on the cowl, they had it kind of pushed down there a little bit. So if we got the slack in it, we may do that, or we may just coil up the slack and kind of leave the connector right there. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. It wasn't hitting the hood when it was closed, and I think on my 2016 the actual connector's up here as well. I don't know, it's just a preference kind of thing at that point. But when taking the factory connector off, I did notice this. If we can get this to peel itself back here a little bit, which we can. Let me get a light up in here. Oh, light. There it is. Just grab a shop light. So if we go up into the hood area here, you can see there's a couple extra spots to also attach that wiring harness. There's one right here at the tip of the flashlight. I mean, you'll see them. One right here at the top where the light fixture goes. One here. Another one down here. So there's more securing places now that we've taken off the factory one and got a better idea. So I'm going to take these third-party clips off that I installed and go ahead and get their wiring harness installed, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So hopefully you can see that up in there. We've got our factory harness secured into our new RAM. We've got it plugged into our light, lock tab in, and we just followed the same path that it did out of our parts RAM. I did end up moving this connector just for giggles because we had the extra wire, and the only thing that was holding it up here was this stud right here. It didn't go to anything. It's not a grounding point. It's just an extra stud for probably an option we don't have. But what they had on it was, and let me find it again. There it is. Just one of these little hold down clips that was just up there to hold it. That was probably just holding the connector up here. So if anybody did add the option, like a factory tech or something were to add the option, it'd be easy for them to find. So you can see down there, we just relocated it and pushed the Christmas tree clip through one of the spare holes that was on the side fender here, or inner fender here, just like it was on the 2010, and just used the freed up hole up here for one of the factory harness hold down. So it's in the same spot as the factory option would have been. And let's just get our liner clipped back in. So we got our light and everything on, attached, wired up. Now what we can do is now go hook up the battery real quick and see if that light comes on its own. If not, we can check it for 12 volts to make sure that we don't have a bad light, or it could just be that you know, it may not be enabled in the body control module or fuse. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Like I said, it's not much, but you know, if you're on the side of the road or something were to happen and it'd be dark out and you not have much for light, at least you'd have, you know, something versus nothing. But awesome. So yes, that circuit was active. It looks like it does have constant 12 volts like it should, because what happens with this light, it just has a little tilt sensor in it. And what should happen is once we lower this enough, there we go. Now it's out. And once you go high enough, the tilt sensor kicks in. There we go. Now she's back on. All right, so beautiful. So that was a pretty quick and easy upgrade. Again, the light housing itself was aftermarket, but the wiring harness is factory. Unfortunately, the aftermarket wiring harness we bought didn't have the right connector to meet up with the body harness, so we ended up just pulling the wiring harness off of our parts RAM. Oh, but with that being said, I guess if you're looking to do a similar type change, no, at least on this one, that's already active. So all you would, the body harness itself is already active. All you would need is the wiring harness and the light itself. It's a pretty straightforward install. Let's go ahead and disconnect our battery, because now that that's on there, we definitely don't want to leave our battery connected and drain things, because that is active all the time because the hood is up. It's not something, if I recall correctly, that's controlled by the body control module. So the body control module doesn't turn that off after a period of time, if I remember correctly. All right, so with that being said, what we're going to tackle next is we're going to see about getting this harness. We're going to mark, probably with a silver Sharpie, where the edges of this latch meet up, just so we can get the new one kind of in the same spot so it latches correctly and holds the hood down like it's supposed to. But then we'll look at getting this changed out. And remember, our plug's already back here for the harness itself. We just need to get it cleaned up because for whatever reason there's no cap, no dust cap on that. So we'll get some contact cleaner on it. But I'll bring you back when we get this changed out. One moment. And welcome back. So as we were talking about earlier, I just took a silver Sharpie and just kind of highlighted and drew a line around the edges of our current hood bracket here. So what I'm going to do is take the replacement one and try to get the edges to line up. I mean, if you look at these two brackets side by side, they're pretty much identical. The only difference being, so on this one, you'll notice there's no plug-in mechanism here. Versus on this one, you'll see that plug on the side, which is meant for this little dangling plug, if you got it, to plug into. And that's the Hood Ajar switch is basically what it is. And the part number for that, in case you're interested, and this works, this is for several makes, models, and years of Rams. There you go. So, well, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to pull a resistance reading on this, because the instructions I'm finding online of what you have to set the AlphaOBD software, I was curious if there was a correlation between it, because like I said earlier, depending on how you want to do this, and this is up to you, and I'm not saying that you should do it one way or another, but you don't necessarily need a whole new latch that comes with this switch. There are a lot of individuals that like to that have cheated this, and you can see that is 0.9 ohms. That is 0.9 ohms being open. Oh, and it just slipped. So it's 0.9 ohms with this latch being open, and it's rather slimy with some fair bit of lubricant on the side of those springs are at. But there's a lot of, like I said, there was a lot of individual online that there is a resistance value that you can get that you can plug into there. Like I said, there's several postings about it, and you can just set apparently the setting and the body computer or body control module appropriately, and basically, trick it out, so to speak, into thinking that you've got that, that hood latch switch, when in fact that you don't. But again, to each their own. Not saying whether you should do it that way or shouldn't do it that way, but just keep in mind that if doing this allows you to remote start the vehicle with the hood open, that could be a potential safety issue. But that being said, we're going to loosen this bolt up, see what it's going to take to get our hood release clip out of here, and then I'll bring you back. One moment. Okay, welcome back. So you can see we've got the old latch unbolted. So what I'm seeing here, in order to get the cable out, you could just take this lever here that it's attached to, push it backwards, as you can see there, gives us the ability, and this is going to be fun to do one-handed. Basically, I'm going to hold this back and then reach in here and pull this cable out, or snake it through. There we go. And now that lever can fall forward. Now that we've got our cable released, as you can see here, there's two plastic tabs that we can squeeze together on either side of this cable to get it out of the mechanism. So let me do that and I'll bring you back. And welcome back. So you can see we got our new cable secured in place. Installation, reverse to removal. Just kind of push that cam forward to give yourself some slack, and then you can get the cable to fit down inside that groove you see there. So now that we've got this done, we went ahead and used some of our, you know, not a sponsor, but WD-40 contact cleaner to squirt quite a bit in there, and you can see that you can actually see the color behind the insulator in this now. So we got a lot of the grime out. Hopefully it's enough and doesn't cause us a problem. But now we can just get our hood latch back in place, line it up with the marks that we made. That'll at least get us a starting point, and if we have to, we can loosen the bolts up and adjust from there. But on this particular mounting, in case you forget which of the 4 bolt holes it was in, it's easy enough just to look at the old one if you had it for any length of time. Like you can see here, we can clearly see it was the 2 top bolt holes they were using for this latch. So let me finish getting this latch put in, then I'm going to make this electrical connection, and then we'll come back and we'll start looking at some AlphaOBD, and we'll look at the settings we need to make in there. One moment. And welcome back. So since we've got our latch mounted now, I've got the voltmeter hooked back up in resistance mode. Figure we might be able to look at it before we plug the plug in, exactly what the truck will see when the latch is closed. So I'm going to have to hit this pretty good, so mind the noise. So you can see where it looks like we're about 1,000, I'm sorry, not 1,000, but 1 kilo ohm of resistance when the hood is closed versus open. So that's the resistance that the body computer or body control module, whichever you may have, or however you want to call it, is going to see, and that's what tells the truck the hood is obviously shut versus open versus. And the reason why I'm saying that is, you'll see if you look this up and you look into the forum posts, you'll have a lot of individuals telling you about different resistors to use and therefore different values to set in ODB, versus if you're using a latch, one of the values they have you set is a resistance value, and I'll show it to you here, but it's a resistance, forget the wording on it, we'll see it here in a second, but it'll basically be a value that is set to 1 kilo ohm. So basically we're going to tell the body computer or the BCM, once again, that we've got the latch installed and this is the resistance reading it should be looking for to know that the hood is closed. So what I'm going to do is disconnect our meter, get our electrical connector plugged in, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. I got you zoomed back in on the laptop. I'm just looking for my printout. Okay, according to this, we need to go into the body computer, car configuration. First thing we're going to do is remote start present to yes. So we are in our Ram 1500 once again, body computer, and again we have a gateway, central gateway module they call it in this one because of the year. It's not called a body computer, but same difference. Let's get connected to that. Okay, it says we're connected. Active diagnostic. It says we need to go into car configuration change. It says that we are looking for remote start. Yep, remote start to present. No. Remote start present. I'm going to, there we go, hit start. So it's not set currently. We're going to set that to yes. And we're going to hit next. I'm going to wait. Procedure complete. Okay, so that one has been set. Now it says we need to go into CBC IO Hood Ajar switch input preset to yes. So can we just search for the word hood? Nope. Nope, no CBC. Okay, CBC. So that was a body computer. Okay, we may be in the wrong module here, but I'm going to take a look. So we want Hood Ajar input preset to yes. We also are looking for usage Hood Ajar switch. See, he called this CBC, and I don't see a CBC. So we changed the one option that we did have, which was under vehicle config 1, and that was tell it that the remote start was present. I don't see, yeah, I don't see an Ajar. I don't see a hood. So we might be in the wrong area. So let me do this. Rather than having you guys just kind of wait around while I find where the setting was at, because I thought the CBC was also under the body computer, but I guess not. I'm going to have to look for it and find out where it's at in this version. I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So it took me a little bit of digging to find an example of this, because this is an older RAM. It's a non-PowerNet, so there are less examples of this. So the first example I was trying to find was a PowerNet example, but this is not a PowerNet, so to speak, because of its age. So the first one, remote start present, change set to set, which we already have. According to this gentleman's instructions, what we're now looking for is a vehicle config 2, something called RKE System Present, change to set. So that'll be the next thing we need to do. So we're looking for RKE System Present. Yep, vehicle config 2, RKE System Present. Change this to set. Okay, says it's set. I'm just going to pull that up again. Okay, got procedure complete. Okay, I just want to make sure that it took. And then we are looking for configurable input number 2, which they call B11, change to Hood Ajar. So we want B11 under configurable inputs. Number 2, B11. change it to Hood Ajar. Okay, procedure complete. So what we should now have, according to his instructions, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to double check this, is that we should have vehicle config 1, 2, and a configurable input set. So if we go back to our start, I'm going to disconnect from the body computer and then reconnect to the body computer. So we're now connected. I want to go back and just look at those 3 settings again, just to make sure those 3 settings took. And we were looking for the first one being remote start present. Oop, that's remote steering wheel switches. I don't want those. Now stay on what I selected, please. Okay, it is set. And then we are looking to make sure RKE System Present is set to set. It is set to set. Good. It took it. And then we were looking for configurable input number 2 needs to be set to, which is B11, needs to be set to Hood Ajar. It is set to Hood Ajar. Okay, perfect. So we have the settings in thus far. And now we need to go back to the main app and select a radio frequency hub. This is where they're going to do a reset on this, but the first thing we want to do is make sure that we got our PIN number, because we need the PIN number in order to do the reset of the radio frequency hub. So radio frequency hub. So we are looking here for a non-powernet 2009, 2012. Looks like they got a VAR1 and a VAR2 same year. So we're not an 09, 010. We're not a 2013 plus. We're not a model year 2009, we're a 2012, so we're going to be either a VAR1 or a VAR2. Let's just see if we can connect to it. Okay, it says we did connect. So I'm going to go in Active Diagnostics, and we should have an option to read the PIN. I'm going to try that first. I want to make sure that we can read our PIN. PIN is 4669er, and that is the same PIN that is needed when you go to program keys. Now if you remember from a previous video on this truck, we've already programmed keys needed with remote start. I'm just looking for something to write with the PIN here. 1 minute. I want to write this PIN down. It says our PIN is 4669er for this particular truck. And according to this gentleman's instructions, it looks like our last step is to reset the win / put your PIN in and follow the steps. After that, you have two options. You can pre-wired Hood Ajar, okay, which we already did. We already have our new latch installed. So reset WIN configuration. Now, I'm assuming that probably what he means is reset WCM configuration, because we're in the wireless control module. Yep, change all has been replaced. And procedures have been performed. So now we need our pin. 4669er. Okay, that's running. Procedure completed. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, now that we have that done, we're going to disconnect. And then we're going to shut the key off. Now, here's the tricky part. So the tricky part on this, and what some people say, is to basically let the truck set for a little while and then attempt a remote restart. Others have stated they've had to actually let the truck set and drive it for a bit, and then they could get it to do a remote restart. It's been kind of a little bit all over the place as to whether, you know, they had to let it sit or not, or take it for a drive and then let it sit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close the hood on it, let it set out here for a little bit, and then we'll give it a try. But to kind of recap those settings, because again, this is a non-PowerNet because of the year. So it was all under, well, three of these settings were under the car configuration change. So vehicle config 1, remote start present, change to set. RKE System Present, change to set. Configurable input number 2, B11, change it to Hood Ajar, which we did. And then we went into the, as you can see here, radio frequency hub, wireless control module on the non-PowerNet. Select reset WIN, and in our case it wasn't called reset WIN, which is reset WCM. And after that, you can see here he missed that we have two options. If you have pre-wired Hood Ajar switch, latch near the horn, and with an extra connector, which we did, so we went ahead and just bought the new hood switch that connector can plug into. And so you can buy the latch and switch will be ready to go, or if it's not pre-wired, you can take out the tip from the fuse box and look for a connector. So I'll put a link to this page in the description, so if you've got an early model Ram like we do, and if you don't have that wiring already in the front of the grill like we did to plug that new latch into, it looks like he gives you some instructions here of how you can take out the tip-em, which is the fuse box, and look for a particular connector, find the pin number 3 and ground it. And it looks like he also put a note in here about that 1K resistor. Let's see, I've read that if you put a resistor of 1K ohms, but I tried it without success and it worked fine either way, but I put in the resistor either way. So that's why I was measuring the resistance of that hood latch when it was closed, because on newer Rams that have a PowerNet, they want you to go into an option, if you have it, under the CBC IO usage Hood Ajar switch usage, change it to a 1K parallel resistor, letting it know that you're using the hood latch, and that closed, it should be looking for that 1K resistance that is on that wire or on those two pins when that hood is shut. So again, like I said, with that being said, we're just gonna let the truck sit here for a little bit. I'm going to close the hood so that is shut. I'll give it about 30 minutes or so, and then I'll bring you back, and then we'll try to hit the remote start button on the truck and see if it makes any difference or not. Again, there's a likelihood that it won't, in which case we'll have to wait until we can take it for a spin, and then let it set, and then we'll give it another try. So be a moment for you and a few minutes for me. One moment. And welcome back. So it's been probably about 20 minutes or so, 15-20 minutes since I closed all the doors, made sure they were locked, and also closed the hood to make sure it was done. And this is one of the fobs, one of the generic fobs if you remember we programmed for this truck earlier in this series. And the only difference is this one has the push twice to remote start versus the ones that came with it from the factory. You can see doesn't have that. Now there's a lot of internet postings that say if you take this fob apart, just take this membrane off, this switch membrane off, and you probably have the electrical contacts underneath for remote start, which in that case, all you need to do is get yourself a replacement top cover and use your existing fobs. But since we have these here, since we have them programmed, well, let's give it a shot. We got a beep. But that's all we got. Okay, so it did recognize it. It did start. Let's see if it throws a fault on the dash as to why it didn't do it. Yeah. Okay. Just a beep. Okay, and I don't see a fault on the dash saying like the hood's ajar or anything of that nature. So this may be a case where, like I was reading a lot of postings, that you just have to start it, run, drive it a little bit, let it set, and then come back to it. And that seems to kind of reset things and get things to work. So what I'm going to do is, I'll bring you back for this, but I'm going to set up my scan tool. We'll scan it for codes real quick and make sure that it doesn't see like the hood ajar. If it sees the hood ajar, then it could be that the wiring, even though it's plugged into that hood switch, it may not be going all the way into the TIPM like it's supposed to. But, you know, based on the year this truck is, this year doesn't have a body control module. Even though you see me going into what AlphaOBD calls the body computer, it's actually going into the TIPM. The TIPM is actually your gateway / body control module on this vintage of a Ram. But yeah, see. Let's get things unlocked here. Let me plug in just to make sure we don't have any fault codes, and then chances are that's what the issue will be, is that we just need to drive it for a little bit and let it set. But let me get you set up and I'll bring you right back. And welcome back. So just did a quick code scan here, and you can see a lot of it does have codes, but the majority of those codes are stored. They're codes that we expect to see. So you can see right low beam, high beam is now stored because we have our headlight assembly installed back on the passenger side. The only active codes we see are for the heated steering wheel because we don't have it installed. And actually the tire pressure monitoring system is showing normal now, which is kind of cool. We'll have to see if we're actually reading tire pressure. Now that may be, the reason why that may be reading normal is because we did reset the WCM, which the WCM not only, as you can see here, is the wireless control module, but it's also a part of the TPMS system. So yeah, I'm not seeing any codes, which is cool. Now, one thing we can do to test the hood ajar functionality is to pop the hood and then run a code scan, and we should see a fault in the, what they call again the body control module, which in this case is also the TIPM. So let me do that. I'm going to put the key back in the ignition. I'm going to actually pop the hood first, make sure that that is an open circuit, and then we'll put the key in the ignition. We'll run another scan, but I'll bring you back. One moment. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we can see it. So let's do another, this time, let's just do another full health report. may log in on the first key cycle, or it may not. We may not be able to even see it at all. It's just an attempt to kind of doing some testing here. Yeah, stored. So if we actually enter that module, let's see if we can even see it within the data. Let's see if we even have an option to see the Hood Ajar switch. Yeah, we do. Let's see if we can see it. Okay, now cool. You see that does say, it does read it, and does say that it's a jar. So I'm going to go close it. Going to be a little bit loud. I apologize. And let's see if that value updates. Okay, beautiful. It sees it as closed. So awesome. That means that the setting we turned on earlier with the Alpha OBD software is working, because we can now see that data PID. So it's not an issue with it not seeing the hood closed, and we know that it is now responding to the fact that we've told it has a remote start unit on it, because we can, double click the start button 2 times on the fob and it does beep. It just doesn't do anything else with it. So we know we have that section of it taken care of. And if we remember, there was 3 options that he had us change. I'm going to bring those up here. And I will put a link in the description as well to this article, in case you're also working on an 09 to 12 RAM and you're dealing with what they call a non-powernet system. And just scrolling down to his settings here. Yeah, so the RKE System Preset changed to set, so we know we got that. So we can verify that we've got the 2. Now the RKE system, I don't know if we can actually necessarily verify that we can see that. I want to see if it'll read the config. Just big pitchman. I'm curious if it'll actually see the remote start in here now. Here's our heated seat module we were playing with earlier. Looking to see if we have and there's 24 pages of this, because there's a lot. We're getting into the REs. Yeah, okay, remote start present set. So that was one of the changes that we did earlier, if you remember. Okay, so we do see the changes that we made via AlphaOBD. So that's not an issue. Okay. So what it may be, and I'll continue to research this, and I'll definitely bring you back and let you know, is that, again, it may fall into a situation I've seen a lot of individuals state where it's just got to set and possibly set for a while, take it for a drive, and then let it sit again. And then for a lot of individuals, that seems to be kind of the last piece of the puzzle, so to speak. So with that being said, I will pause it. I'll bring it back. It should be a moment for you, but it may be it'll be the next day or so, or possibly for me. Talk to you in a bit. And welcome back. So we've let the truck sit overnight, and before we take it out and attempt to drive it, and like the forum posts were saying, like I said, when we enable the remote start, if you remember last time, we clicked our button twice for the remote start and the truck would just beep. It wouldn't do anything past that. And what a lot of people were saying was on the forum posts were that, you know, they had to let the truck sit for a little bit, take it out for a bit of a drive, come back, and then it would work. Well, I did let the truck sit overnight. You can see we're still here on the lift. And before we take it out and drive it, I just figured I'd go ahead and try it since it's been sitting here for a few hours and just see what it does. We may still have to take it out and drive it, but I figured I'd give it a shot. Okay, yeah, as you can hear there, still just the one beep. So yeah, what we'll have to do next is work on getting this thing down and out of here, and take it for a little bit of a drive, let the TPMS reset. And the deal with the TPMS reset is, according to the service manual, now that it has to sit in one place for 20 minutes not moving, and then you take it out and you have to maintain a speed of, I believe it is above 15 miles an hour for at least 10 minutes or so, and it should self-learn the new IDs in the TPMS sensors. So that'll be one thing we'll be doing. The other thing we'll be doing is obviously just using that for a shakedown run, and then we'll see what happens once we take it for a little bit of a spin and bring it back and let it set, if we can then remote start. So we're going to work on getting this lift down and getting this vehicle out here and give it a shot. So I'll bring you right back. And welcome back. If you remember, in the previous video, we were programming the remote start options into this truck, and one of the items that would come up, and I'm sorry, it's dark because I'm sitting in the cab and it's getting to be pretty dark out, so I may only have one more shot at this before my neighbors kill me, or get really upset with me, because I've done this about a couple times just testing it. But we're back inside of our Ram. As you can see, we're out of the garage. We have gone on a couple of test drives, and yes, we did change the oil. I didn't tape it, because don't worry, I've got other videos on the channel that cover doing the oil change. And let me and just trust me when I tell you that it needed to be done. And with that being said, just like the instructions said, after we took the truck for a short drive and let it set, the remote did start working, and I'll show you that here towards the end. So when we first drove the truck, for full transparency, we got a cylinder 8 misfire. So we did the normal checks with it. We swapped coils, misfire was still an 8. We made sure that we had good power and signal to the injector. We had good power and signal to the coil. No issues there. And then it dawned on me that the fuel rail on this engine was the old fuel rail off our 2009 TRX project. And if you remember, we swapped over the fuel rail on that 09 because the one it had so many issues with clogged injectors and just bad injectors due to the fact that somebody dumped something in the fuel tank they shouldn't have. What I ended up doing was also pulling the plugs out of the number 8 cylinder. We compression tested while we were at it. We were getting about 180 to 190 psi, so we knew compression was good. We knew we were getting control for spark. We knew we were getting control and power for fuel as well, for fuel injector. But after remembering that fuel rail was off our old truck, I went ahead and pulled a fuel injector off our parts ram, changed that out, and also pulled the spark plugs. And when we pulled the spark plugs out of the number 8 cylinder to do the compression test, they were a brand of spark plug that I would never put in a Hemi engine. Just my preference. I would not use this particular brand. I'm not going to say it, but I went out and got some NGKs. So switched them out with factory NGK, or the factory recommended NGK plugs. Also changed out that fuel injector, and the number 8 misfire, so far, knock on wood, has been gone. So it's either was a plug issue or it was an issue with the fuel injector itself. So with that being done and not seeing the misfire anymore, we took it for a couple of drives at that point as a shakedown run, and also to basically finish the brake check-in from installing the brakes in the previous clip, because remember, it had been in the garage all this time and hadn't been driven. So we completed that procedure per power stop to get those new pads broke in and married up with the rotors. So that should be complete. The only outstanding issue that we ran into is I ran into some evap codes that came back after a couple of drive cycles. Not came back, but showed up. So one of them was a large leak code, another one was evap performance. So just on the chance, I switched out the fuel cap with the one off our parts RAM to see if maybe it was fuel cap related. I also have a new fuel cap on order, but it won't be here for a couple of days. So far, after changing out that fuel cap for the one off our parts RAM and driving around a couple of times, I haven't seen the evap codes come up yet. So it either means A, it hasn't run them, or B, hopefully the leak is now sealed. If not, I'll have to bring you back in a different video and we'll have to troubleshoot the evap system. And the TPMS system. I'm still working on that one. Unfortunately, my scan tool won't let me do an ODB2 relearn, which would be a faster way of doing this. I've also tried to program the IDs manually into the TPMS system, and it wasn't having it. So far, it still comes up and doesn't see the sensors. Now, there's a self-learning procedure that apparently is available in all Rams from like early 2000s up to current. And what you have to do is, make sure the tires are properly inflated. You go around with the TPMS tool, you ping each sensor. Once the sensors are pinged, you let the truck sit there for, I think it is 10-20 minutes, and then you have to drive it for a period of time after that above a certain speed in order to get the relearn to basically take those new sensor IDs and write them into the ECU. So, I'm going to do the self-learning procedure on this truck, and I'll post a section in the comments, and I'll also bring it back and probably do a short video on it just to kind of follow up on that at some point when we finally do get the light to clear. So with that being said, again, cylinder 8 misfire, we fixed that issue. Evap codes that came up, we changed out the gas cap, clear the codes. Codes haven't come back yet. I'll keep you updated on it. And the TPMS issue is that. And we do have remote start functional on our RAM now. So other than those couple of items, everything else is working fine. Absolutely no issues with the truck or issues with any of the modifications we've done thus far. And I do apologize again for it being dark. You're just looking at the darkened steering wheel at this point. Again, my apologies for all that, for it getting dark. Again, I just, because it's going to tie in on it. I'm going to show you the remote start, and it'll be easier the darker it gets out here. So again, no issues with anything else thus far. Everything else we've done, the new front wheel bearings, the brakes all the way around, remember the emergency brake cables, and all the maintenance we've done thus far. So far, no issues with any of that. We know our wheel speed sensors and our front bearings are working, because we're getting, again, you'll see it on the dash, but there's no ABS faults, no traction control faults, none of that. Everything is working like a top. So far, the engine's running smooth. Transmission is shifting gears. So far, no issues there. And that was part of the reason for wanting to do this, not only to get the inspection, but to get some drive time in to make sure there's nothing wrong with that transmission prior to us going to the next series of videos. Is once we're done with the inspection and we know that we have a year again before the next one, then that's when we can really start tearing into the performance mods. And I want to get some drive time in on this one the way it's currently set up, to make sure we're not having a transmission issue, because if we are, then we'll have to replace it, and I'd much rather replace it you know, at the same time we pull the engine out, then the, you know, pull the engine out, build it up, get it back in, and then realize, oh, we got to pull the transmission out. I'd rather do it with the engine removed. So with that being said, like I said, everything is working fine, and I'm going to show you the remote start here, and that it does work. And you know, again, for the cost of a hood latch, a couple of fobs that have the remote start button that we programmed into the truck, and the AlphaOBD software, in my opinion, well worth the money to get the remote start function to work. Now, say that with a grain of salt, being that we had the wiring already pre-installed for the hood latch. We didn't have to run it. I've seen in the forums where individuals had the plug on the hood latch, but it didn't run all the way, in our case, to the tip-em like it needed to, or to their body. If later models of Rams, they don't use the tip-em, they have a separate body control module. But like the forums said, again, if I've already stated this once before, I apologize. Once we had everything programmed and we let the truck sit, after we drove it one time and let it sit again, then the remote start started to work, as odd as that sounds. So I'm going to show you that now. So we're just going to lock the doors and exit. And this will be the last time I can do this, because I'm sure it's going to annoy the neighbors. See there? Done from the fob. So that was the double horn honk. Now I'm just going to unlock it so we can get in. You'll see it there on the dash. It says remote start active. Insert key to run. So we'll go ahead and do that so we can take control. You see when I do that, the rest of the dash comes up. The rest of the lights go in the test. Everything goes out other than our, you know, flashing TPMS light, but I already explained that. We're going to have to go through the, you know, self-learn procedure on that and see if we can finally get that taken care of. But as you can see, running just fine. Remote starts working like a top. We got good oil pressure. We weren't overheating on any of our drives. I'm pleased with it, very pleased with it at this point. So with that being said, let's go ahead and shut this off so I'm not idling all our fuel out, because we are getting rather low on fuel. So with that being said, I'm going to let you go at this point. We're going to call it a video. I'll bring you back if those evap codes come up. I'll bring you back because we'll do a video. We'll troubleshoot the evap system and see what we need to get those, what we need to do to get those fixed. If those don't come back, then once it's done with its state inspection, I'll let you know the status of the TPMS system, the state inspection, and obviously once we pass that state inspection, we'll then be able to go on to the next series of videos where we can start planning out what we want to do for our updates. Because along with the engine updates, we're going to be doing some updates to the rear differential in this, because as you know, we have the one wheel peel, one tire fire on this truck, and what we want to do is change it out to a limited slip differential. So there'll be some cool work that'll be coming along with that, because we want to basically give ourselves a little bit better differential to go along with all the performance mods we're going to be doing to the engine. So, but so on and so forth. I will definitely bring you back, and like I said, give you those status updates as they become available. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider to do so. It'd be very, very much appreciative. For those who have already, thank you. For those that have not, please consider to do so. We're knocking right on that doorstep of 1,500 subscribers, and would love to continue this channel growth for quite some time. Again, the bigger the channel, the easier it is to bring more of these projects type to you. And once again, we're not done with old Candy Apple here. We got a lot of stuff yet planned for this girl. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is that it's going to rain tomorrow. And obviously, since we're sitting outside, is I'm going to monitor our little previous water leak here in the back and make sure that replacing that third eye brake light and that satellite antenna on top and getting those seals replaced, make sure that that takes care of our leak. But with that being said, it's getting dark out here. I'll let you go and I'll bring you back for the next one. But we're looking good. I'm pleased. Thank you much. Bye.